Okay, this may be a little bit rambly, and I've been on some online conversations recently about race and color and ethnicity, and I kind of feel like I'd like to put my view in on it. So, race is a social construct. We all know it doesn't actually exist. Um, Genetically, if you look at genetics, there are some genetic differences, but looking at those differences, there would be almost, like I think there's 7 or 9 different African genetic races, and then there's an Asian, and there's a, Europe, and, I think there is actually a Native American, but most of us are just collaborations of all of those. So I acknowledge that race is a social construct that can help and hinder to us to understand the world we're in. I do not use the term African American. I think it's a misnomer. When I was growing up and I, like other people, read the dictionary and saw that all these terms for black were so negative, such as, black magic or harmful, dark, sinister, some of the things you can see when you look up black. And I was like, well, no, that applies to me, so I'm going to use the term African American. And, this is back in the 80s and early 90s where, it was like, it's a black thing you wouldn't understand, and people are wearing the kente cloth hats and the African medallions with the big Africa in it, and, and all the Jesus was Black Like Me t-shirts, and just, lots and lots of African American positivity and pride, but especially a lot of African injected pride. And then I went to Peace Corps. I went to Peace Corps in Namibia, which is in southern Africa. It's right above South Africa, right below Angola. So if Africa kind of looks like this, South Africa is here, Namibia is right here, Angola's here. So, and then there's Ghana and, other stuff over here. So when I went to Peace Corps, I was expecting to have this kind of coming home experience. Understanding that I'm Black American, and that's where some of my roots came from, the majority of my roots came from. I also have Native American ancestry on both sides of my family, and there's probably some white ancestry in there also, especially since my last name is Scottish. So, but I'm, most of my roots probably are African. So I was expecting to have this kind of great homecoming, kind of back to the motherland, to be cliche about it, experience. And that's not what I experienced at all. When I was there, the first thing I was told was, well, not the first thing, but one of the big things I was told was, number one, you're not Black, and number two, you're not American. Now, the reason why they told me I wasn't Black is because I didn't look like them. Way lighter. My hair is not at all in any way directly African. Not my features aren't directly African. So the first thing, they were like, you're not from here. Where are you from? And then when I say, oh, well, I'm American, they would say, no, you're not. Because American to them meant that you were a white male, to be quite honest. So when I would say, oh, but how about Whoopi Goldberg? Or, oh, what about, Colin Powell? And Alicia Keys. And they would say, oh, well, Alicia Keys is white. Colin Powell is white. Whoopi Goldberg is South African. And I would say, okay, no. But and to be fair, I was in Namibia, and Namibia was the last African nation to be gain its independence, because it gained its independence from South Africa. And I was working in rural areas, so all that understood. They still did not see me. Number one, I wasn't one of them. Number two, I wasn't American. So then, when saying, okay, well, where do you think I'm from? They would say, oh, we think you're Cuban. We think you're maybe South African. We think you're maybe Egyptian. You're Angolan. You're somewhere and you're not from here. Which I thought was interesting, but okay. So the longer I was there, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer, so I was there for 2 years and 3 months, and then I spent another 6 months traveling around Africa afterwards. And as I was there and I experienced their culture, the more I really came to understand that my culture, the Black American culture, is unique to being a person of color with slavery ancestry within the United States. Because the way I talked, the way I considered community, the way I thought of family, the way I thought of my country were very, very, very different. And some of them you would expect, like, okay, well, they're Namibian, I'm American, so clearly the way I think of country is different. But the way I thought of community is different. The way I thought beyond just, my family and what I had to provide for them, or, the concept of giving back to my community and trying to help other young people get to where I am and have the experience I've experienced, didn't really exist in the culture I grew up in. Or not I grew up in, but the culture I was in Peace Corps for. And it blew my mind to realize how Black American and not African I was. And the more I traveled throughout Africa, the more I really came to understand that African American, if you do not have a parent from Africa, is a misnomer. And we really, as a Black American community, should have pride in the fact that we are a group of people who have surpassed and overcome so much. The fact that we are one of the only immigrants to the United States, or one of the few immigrants, the only group of immigrants to the United States who didn't come over willingly. That we as a people survived slavery. We as a people survived civil rights, and we continue to gain more knowledge about the world around us. Now, that being said, Black Americans need to travel because the rest of the world don't know we're out here. I've traveled a lot, and especially when I'm not on the continent of Africa, when I was in Germany or I was in India, or, other places I've gone, they always think I'm British because British people travel. So we need to get out there. We need to leave our country, and so people know that we exist. Outside of Jay-Z and Beyonce, because come on. But from that experience with my students telling me I'm not Black and I shouldn't call myself Black, from that experience of realizing that my culture, women, oh my goodness, Black American women, we are so strong and we're raised to be so strong. In the culture that I keep saying that, in the culture of Namibia, where I was in Peace Corps, in some ways I did grow up there. Women were not respected. Women did the menial labor. It was nothing for a man to grab a woman while she was talking to someone else and drag her off and have another conversation with her. It wasn't unusual. It wasn't thought to be strange or impolite. Women had no power. And that's so foreign to me, the way I grew up as a Black woman in America. So I do say I am a Black American. That is my culture. That is my ethnicity. As for race and heritage, I refer to Black Americans as a culture, as an ethnicity. As for race, which is a social construct, I understand how other people see me as a Black American or as a African American by their definitions. Personally, after traveling and after being told I wasn't Black, but I also wasn't white by my students, I was somehow in between. And my travels in India and everywhere else, I honestly prefer the term brown. I am a brown girl with curly hair. And I know some people are like, oh, but Latinos are brown or Indian people are brown. And I'm like, and I have the same skin tone as a lot of those people. I mean, you can be dark brown. You can be a light brown. I'm kind of a medium brown, I consider. You can be, brown almost black. You can be, a light brown, a very light brown. And that's how I kind of consider most minorities. Most of us are just brown people. Or at least minorities in the United States. We're brown. We're all brown people together. The stereotypes about us may be different, but we're just brown people together. And I feel like that is the best definition of myself, as a brown woman with curly hair. So that's my experience. That's how I kind of came to my definition. Feel completely comfortable to continue this conversation with comments. But from my travels and from my understanding, and I realize that that's not how other people may see me. I understand when I'm in different situations, people may see me as, the Black medical student or the female medical student or, the, person who's going to be a doctor or, a person who got by because she was Black and maybe got some experiences that she didn't earn. Now, I know I earned them, but that may be what other people perceived. And I've spent a lot of reflection time understanding and trying to understand how other people see me, because I think it's a key part of working with people from everywhere, anywhere and everywhere. I feel like you kind of need to understand how people see you, so you know where they're starting from. So if it's an incorrect assumption, you can talk to them and work with them and help them understand. No, I worked. I worked to get, the degrees I have or to get into the schools I've gotten to. But that's how I see myself. And that's the most important thing. I have a friend who has Italian ancestry, and she was like, you always talk about brown people. Well, I feel like I'm a brown person. So I call her a brown person too. I have no problem with calling you whatever you want to be called. So be well.